So I just caught an interview with Khabib. He did an interview with Brett on ESPN, and he's so matter of fact. The way Khabib talks is so interesting to me because it's just so matter of fact, and everything is very clear. And this is the way it is. And you can then choose whether you agree with his opinion or not. But you can tell by the way he says something that he does not doubt himself. It's very interesting. You guys know my favorite Khabib story, but I just love it. You remember the night that the melee happened. The brawl happens. He jumps the fence. 14,000 live people don't know what's going to happen. The governor has to take cover. Khabib goes to the post-fight press conference, which was about 10 minutes later. Somebody asked him about it, and Khabib said, I don't know. Why do you still talk about this? It just happened. And Khabib, why do you still talk about this? And it was just so interesting to me because it was an interesting look into the mind of Khabib. And Khabib also gets a little bit of room anytime he says something. He always gets a little bit of room because if it appears to be off color, you just chalk that up to the language barrier. Like his accent and his comprehension of the English language can get him out of almost any jam if you want to get him out of the jam. All right, refocus on the interview. Couple of things happen here that in many cases would drive me bonkers. In this case, I really liked it. Maybe it was because of the way he said it and the confidence of which he spoke. But one thing that happened, Brett asked him about rematching Conor. And Khabib's the one that said this will never be done. My beef with Conor will never be settled. One of us will have to go to jail. If I see Conor, I will fight Conor. So you got a very real thing there. I mean, he's sharing this with you. But then when Brett talks about him putting the title up and putting it up against Conor, he said absolutely not. He said no. He said, why would you even, he said, how would that even happen? And Brett's like, Dana White calls you and says, this is your next opponent. He said that call would never happen. Conor is nowhere near in line. Tony Ferguson is next. Conor should go fight Ally Aquina and go fight Cowboy, work his way back up the line. I will never even be offered Conor because that makes no level of sense. Now, that isn't totally accurate for a number of reasons. But there is something there to the mindset. And most importantly, what I hope everybody heard is when he said Tony Ferguson is next. The reason that's relevant is because they just talked to Dustin Poirier, who said the exact same thing. One of those two guys is going to be world champion in a couple of weeks. Both of them are saying Tony Ferguson is next. I like that. I think that's good news, and I don't think anybody would complain. I think what has happened to Tony Ferguson over the last 24 months has been unfair. It's been unusual, and it's been unfair. Some weird circumstances. You always have this piece, though, in Conor, and you simply can't just get around it. If Conor wants to come back and he wants to take on Dustin, if Dustin's the champion, or if he wants to take on Khabib, it is likely that that's who he will be taking on. If Conor wanted to come back and it was going to be against Ferguson, I mean, look, I don't fully understand his mindset, Conor. I know he wants a big fight, and a big fight is likely going to have to be a championship fight. If it wasn't a championship, things get a little bit weird. I mean, they do get a little bit weird. Okay, you're going to bring Conor back. Conor's going to be main event. We understand that. Can we at least agree on that? Or are you guys haters to the level that Conor's not even going to be the main event? I mean, are we that level of silliness? Or can we at least admit that's a box office draw? Okay, great. So if he's at the top of the bill, and he's got to go 5 rounds, to ask him to go 5 rounds on top of the bill, but there's no belt on the line, I think you're going to have some problems. I mean, I think you're just going to have a little bit of a problem convincing him to do this. The argument that Tony Ferguson has is damn near bulletproof. If you're looking at what happened to him, the way that he lost the title, he was champion. He's never lost, but he's no longer champion. I mean, there's a lot to digest there, right? If you just want to talk about this on paper and you're telling me that Conor doesn't have a very legitimate argument to it as well, you're wrong. That is not true. Khabib has lost 1 round in 26 fights. He lost that round to Conor McGregor. And be as mad about that as you want. That's what happened. And I will also hear people, well, Conor hasn't won a fight in 3 years. Conor won 2 world championships in the 2 hardest weight classes in the sport. That happened. I'm not over here some Conor apologist. But that happened. If you're trying to argue resumes, it's not one without a discussion. That I will tell you. It's not one without a discussion. And I also think that we can solve every problem here, right? Both of the guys who are going to be Dustin and Khabib, are saying that Tony's next. Great. It sounds as though Tony's next. But then what's next? What comes after that? And not for nothing, Tony's been very vocal that he wants to fight Conor McGregor. And it didn't have to do with championships, and it didn't have to do with money. It was actually a totally different story. He was pissed off. They had dual managers. He thought that he was getting slid and Conor was getting pushed. I mean, this actually dates back a while ago, pre-Conor Mania. So that would make a lot of sense. And I don't think that people would argue if that fight was to happen. But now that I've just convinced you that we wouldn't argue that it happened, I think that I've also convinced you on the other part of my argument that yes, Conor can come right back into a championship fight. So many people are saying that would not be right. He cannot walk into a championship fight. But if I told you that Tony got to fight first, Khabib and Dustin are going to go do their business, Tony then gets to fight the winner, and then Conor comes in, and all of a sudden you're going, yeah, okay, I like that. Well, see the problem? If I'm convincing you that he gets to walk into a title fight, then it seems like the real holdup from the fans is Tony needs his shot. I'm with you on that. I've got no problem with that. Just be ready for when Conor comes back, it's likely to be for a title. If it's not going to be for a title, it's likely going to be against Nate Diaz. I don't know how bullish I am on that idea that that's going to happen at 170 pounds. I'm just sharing for you, there is a real discussion there. And it does always bring me back to just how good is Conor McGregor. I truly do worry. I truly do wonder the answer to that question. Just how good is a guy who can win an interim championship only having 7 times experience, can go on and win the undisputed championships with one punch over a guy who hadn't lost in a decade, can change weight classes, do a $17.2 million gate at Madison Square Garden, and touch up Eddie Alvarez in less than 10 minutes. I mean, just how good is that son of a bitch? Oh, and by the way, when they brought him along, when they openly fed him guys to build him, one of those guys was named Max Holloway. One of those guys was named Dustin Poirier. I mean, just how good is he? I would be more curious to see it in the world of boxing. And we just had the anniversary of Conor versus Floyd. Now it's been, was it the 2-year anniversary? It was this last week. Was it the 2-year anniversary since those guys fought? Never in my life, any topic, not just sport, have I seen something more rewritten, more historically untrue and rewritten than that fight. I remember when the fight happened, and still to this day, people regurgitate the pay-per-view numbers. I was there live. I wasn't a hater. I loved the whole thing. I brought my mother to it. Relevance to my mother is I got her ticket the day of the show. How was that possible? Because it didn't sell out. We are led to believe that did these huge pay-per-view numbers. DirecTV happens to be a publicly traded company. As is Cox, as is Time Warner, as is Dish. Not one exec of any of those companies has ever come out to back the claims of the pay-per-view buys. But we're left to believe that it was this huge pay-per-view success. There's nothing in the history of the world that has been a huge pay-per-view success that didn't sell out an arena. By the way, just so you guys understand that, when the arena is 80% full, that does not translate into worldwide number. It just doesn't happen. There are people who are trying to say, and that was Floyd's 50th win, by the way. They're trying to say that Floyd should not be recognized as 50-0 because there's a huge asterisk to this, that he fought Conor McGregor, an untrained and an unproven boxer. Now that is stunning to me Because most boxers' careers are done exactly what Floyd did, where you have a lot of journeymen. You just have them early on, you have them on the way up. That is true that it was in reverse. You don't usually have a journeyman on your way out. A guy with a padded record, right? You just don't usually have that. But to make believe that it doesn't count somehow, that a sanctioned fight right in front of our eyes somehow didn't happen. Oh, and by the way, he's taken on a 2-time world champion who just came over from a different sport. That somehow that didn't count. This was baffling to me. Absolutely baffling that somebody would attempt to rewrite history, and in large part has been successful in doing it. Then you go look at the fight itself. Conor McGregor kicked Floyd's ass. Period. Floyd kicked Conor McGregor's ass right back. There was 9 seconds left in round number 1 before Floyd Mayweather made a closed fist and moved an arm in the direction of Conor McGregor. With 9 seconds left, Floyd threw his first punch. All 3 judges scored that round Mayweather. That is impossible. That should be illegal. That should be a crime. When that fight ended, it ended in the 10th round. And Conor won. I'm sitting next to Teddy Atlas, the most respected mind and voice in boxing. Teddy had 4 rounds for Conor. That was Teddy. I had 6 rounds for Conor. Teddy had 4. When those scorecards came in, okay, 10 rounds of boxing, 9 completed. One judge of all those rounds, one judge gave 1 round to Conor. And by the way, that 1 round was not the very first round of which Floyd threw 1 punch. They were getting ready to rob him. That should have been the story. Now, fortunately, it was a TKO and nobody complains and the right guy won. But they were getting ready to rob him. Because it didn't have to go to the judges, the commission saw nothing to see here. There is something to see here. There is 27 turned in scorecards from your 3 judges spread over 9 rounds apiece. 1 round went to Conor. Oh, and by the way, it wasn't the first round which Floyd flicked. Okay. As insane as everything that I just said to you is, I haven't even gotten to the cherry on the sundae, which is the people who will insist that Floyd carried him. Floyd carried him so there was something to see. Floyd let him stay in that. I like to have fun, and suspending reality can be fun. And you go to the movies and you watch things on television for entertainment. That is so beyond ridiculous. Not to mention illegal. It's actually against the law. He could not do that. For the same reason that in the NBA playoffs, they can't just choose to go to Game 5 because they could do a little bit more business and sell some more t-shirts if it gets extended. They must put the other team away. You must. But if you're not a competitor, you're just a fan, you may not understand this concept. I mean, maybe that's where this comes from. You must, in any level of sportsmanship, but now you're being sanctioned by the government. It is now law. You must put your best performance forward. There is no mercy clauses. That's what a TKO is. That's what throwing in the towel is. You cannot do that. That is a concept that actually comes all the way from high school football, and I resent it tremendously. That if you're running away with a score, you don't throw big Hail Marys, you put in your second team. That is anti-sportsmanship. The only way to be a good sport, you put your foot, you destroy that other guy as bad as you can, as quickly as you can. That is how you show him any level of respect. To go out there and put one hand behind your back, I mean, it's silly, it wouldn't be done. I'm having a hard time even coming up with the words, but many people believe it to be true. Those same people who will concede and believe it to be true that Floyd carried Conor, then of course don't offer you anything for the 3 corrupt judges who didn't give Conor a single round. I have never witnessed anything in person in my time on this planet that has been more lied about, miscategorized, and attempts to rewrite the facts. From the box office to the contest, the whole thing is essentially Made up.